Hello everyone, my name is Josibel Patalihog Abilido from Bachelor of Elementary Education. Today I will be discussing with one of our topic under this chapter, interpretive approaches to rationality as rule following, cultures, traditions, and hermeneutics.
Here's our agendas and objectives. Let's proceed now.
Understanding other societies. A leading British anthropologist, Sir Edward Evan Evans Pritchard, who published a study of the Azande in 1937. As a member of the Colonial Social Science Research Council, he sponsored research and fieldwork where he is the pioneer, research in the social structure, history, and religion of African and Arab people, as well as other continents. The Azande are an Ubangian ethnic group in Central Africa. They live primarily in the northeastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in south central and southwestern part of South Sudan, and in southeastern Central African Republic. The Azande or Zande believe in witches, and witches play a central role in their lives. Among the Azande, witchcraft can be inherited and that a person can be a witch, causing others harm without realizing her or his influence. A submission origin from South Africa says the name Azande means let there be more blessings. Take a look at the picture. Sir Edward Evans Pritchard, he was surrounded with the Azande tribe. This picture taken in the period of 1926 till 1930. The belief in witchcraft is present in every aspect of Zande society. They believe it is a power that can only be passed on from a parent to their child. To the Azande, a witch uses witchcraft when he has hatred towards another person. Witchcraft can also manipulate nature. Sir Edward Evans Richards quoted, "If I were to develop a fever, I would consult my doctor. If I were an Azande, I would consult a witch doctor to discover who had cursed me. He might consult the poison oracle. This would involve ritual preparation of a mixture known as bench, which we would regard as a poison. Although the Azande have no equivalent concept of our poison, the bench would then be fed to a chicken, again with the proper rituals and questions. Perhaps, has my neighbor put a curse off on me? Would be asked. It would be agreed beforehand whether the death of the chicken would mean yes or no, and the answer would be confirmed by putting the questions the other way around as the poison was administered to another chicken. There is no super language with access to a real reality. All realities are real in the context of the language that defines them as such. For example, a Zande native were to knock on my door and tell me that the hens I keep in my backyard were not the right sort of fowl for the oracle, then he or she might very well be right. But the statement would puzzle me, and it would have no meaning except as a strange story. What are the roles of oracles? Oracles are tasked with finding those responsible for using witchcraft on an individual, and with predicting future tragedies. If someone believes witchcraft is being used to cause misfortune upon one of their relatives, they may seek the wisdom of the oracles to see if that is the case. And there are different methods that are used by oracles to determine whether someone is using witchcraft to bring disaster upon an individual. In addition to the oracles, witch doctors can also predict disasters and reveal the witches who use their witchcraft to cause harm. Although both oracles and witch doctors have their abilities or have these abilities, witch doctors are considered to be more accurate as far as pointing out witches. Witch doctors must go through extensive training. When their assistance is needed, they come together and perform a dance near the home of one who is sick or dead to locate the origin of the evil magic. Normally, a crowd of villagers are surrounding them during their dance, so the witch doctors strive to perform their dance perfectly in order to impress those who are watching. The power that allows witch doctors to track down witches comes from medicinal herbs.
Azande tribe pictures back in 1930s. The Azande scarification and deadliest weapon, including their sculpture.
Professor Alasdair Chalmers MacIntyre was born in 1929 in Glasgow, Scotland, a Scottish American. His contribution to political philosophy since 1981. MacIntyre's central concern is moral philosophy. He argues that it is only in the context of a tradition that any sort of morality can be meaningful, and that we can talk about a tradition only in the context of two other concepts. One would be practice. A practice, or by practice, he seems to mean a coherent social practice which enables a moral life to be pursued. And this enables human beings to tell coherent stories about themselves. He argues that human beings are by nature storytelling animals. And the stories we tell about ourselves are rooted in Asian myths, where everybody is given a clear role. Second narrative. The narrative of ending one life is part of an interlocking set of narratives. He argues, adding that the story of my life is always embedded in the story of those communities from which I derive my identity. He quoted, I am born with a past, MacIntyre affirms, and to try to cut myself from that past in the individualist mode is to deform my present relationships. MacIntyre's criticism of modern society is developed, though a distinction between external and internal goods. Internal goods here are meaning what is valued and desired, goods as opposed to evils. External goods are objects and involve ownership. Internal goods are moral or ethical goods. MacIntyre's example is of teaching a child to play chess. For external goods, the child might not be very interested but might be persuaded into learning by the sweets, and if he or she does well, the sweets are for the child, external goods. For internal goods, the hope is that the child will learn to enjoy and value the skill of playing the game for its own sake. The ability to play well and the satisfaction of winning become internal goods, and they are goods which benefit the community. Mainly, the Professor MacIntyre, he seeks to achieve this not draw or do the use of force, but by changing how people think about, understand, and act in the world. Ultimately, his recommendation is that the particular conditions of the modern world require that this who agree or those who agree with his arguments should, to the greatest possible degree, withdraw from the world into communities where the world or where the old morality can be kept alive until the time right for it to reemerge. MacIntyre's moral excellence with effective human agency and seeks a political environment that will help to liberate human agents to recognize and seek their own goods as components of the common goods of their communities more effectively. For MacIntyre, therefore, ethics and politics are bound together. There is a contradictory or a dialectical relationship between practices and institutions. Practices, the pursuit of internal goods, are dependent upon institutions, but the latter are also concerned with the pursuit of external goods, so there is always danger of corruption. MacIntyre emphasizes the importance of moral goods defined in respect to a community engaged in a practice, which he calls internal goods or goods of excellence, rather than focusing on practice dependent obligation of a moral agent, deontological ethics, or the consequences of a particular act, utilitarianism. Hermeneutics, Hans Georg Gadamer. First of all, Gadamer was a German philosopher of the continental tradition, best known for his 1960 magnum opus, Truth and Method on Hermeneutics. Gadamer is a critic of all conventional notions of objectivity, insisting that knowledge is not a product of coming to understand the action of the individual, however, but of achieving an understanding of the movement of history, and history is a development of a common aim. We can only understand a text when we make ourselves part of that common aim out of which it emerged. Hermeneutics was a term given originally to interpreting the spiritual truth of the Bible, but it was imported into the human sciences by Delphi to refer to the investigation of intentional human behavior and human institutions, and by thinkers after Delphi to refer to processes of understanding within and between traditions and cultures. His philosophies over and against traditional conceptions of truth, Gadamer argues that truth is fundamentally an event, a happening, in which one encounters something that is larger than and beyond oneself. For him, hermeneutics refers to the theory and practice of interpretation where it involves an understanding that can be justified. It describes both a body of historical diverse methodological for interpreting texts, objects, and concepts, and a theory of understanding.
Gadamer's hermeneutics lead him to rejoin the great tradition of humanism. The constant work of interpretation allows human action to be organized for the sake of a common tradition and order of things, and to ensure that all individuals know and acknowledge the tradition and that order as the common one. As we mentioned earlier, that he argued that hermeneutics is not for science investigation, but hermeneutics for him is about interpretation. He was known in his country as he published a book, Wahrheit und Methode, in German. It just so happened that it did not distributed in English countries like America and Britain. But thankfully, because of his knowledge in philosophy, it was already spread the whole world, other countries. That's why now we are very thankful. Interpretation, we can communicate to everyone around the world. Because of him, we were able to say hi, hello, and watch Netflix movies, for example. Captions are available. It is already translated now. It's very easy. Because of his philosophy, we can now share ideas to anyone, to everybody, as we can now watch and discover from other countries, from other cultures. We can freely watch it because it's already available, it's already translated, it's already interpreted. Thankfully and grateful with his work. With his masterpiece, Wahrheit und Methode in English is Truth and Method. Just for a quick recap, Sir Edward Evan Evans Pritchard, a leading British anthropologist who discovered and published the book Witchcraft, Oracles, and Magic among the Azande. Alasdair Chalmers MacIntyre is a Scottish American philosopher who contributed and written the book After Virtue. Hans Georg Gadamer was a German philosopher of the continental tradition, best known for his 1960 magnum opus Truth and Method on Hermeneutics. He is an extraordinarily lucid writer. Conclusion: the basic assumption is the same. The social sciences are concerned with understanding meaningful human action, but the approaches discussed in this chapter all emphasize the significance of the wider culture, whether we call it a language game, a form of life, a tradition, or a community. Once again, this is Josie Bell, Patalingog Aplido, your teacher for today. Thank you so much.